somewhere off the coast of North Vietnam, in the rough waters near the city of Vinh, there's a story that still gives old veterans chills when they talk about it. It didn't start with a loud explosion. It started when an entire island simply disappeared. The United States Navy accidentally erased a piece of land from the map. They didn't use nuclear bombs, they didn't send waves of B-52 bombers, and they didn't even use a fleet of ships. They used one single monster, a steel giant almost 900 feet long, weighing 60,000 tons, a warship that should have stayed in a museum. The Americans called her Big J. The North Vietnamese, the ones who had to live through the nightmare raining down on them, called her something far scarier, the Black Dragon. And the story of the island that vanished isn't just a tall tale, it really happened. To understand how a whole island can disappear, we have to go back to 1968. That was the year America thought it could win the Vietnam War with brand new technology, supersonic jets, guided missiles, the latest radar and computers. But it wasn't working. The North Vietnamese had built one of the best air defense networks on Earth. American planes were getting shot down faster than they could be replaced. Smart bombs got lost in the thick jungle canopy. The terrible monsoon weather blinded even the best pilots. The Pentagon was stuck. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara needed a new idea, something that could fight day and night in any weather, something that could shrug off enemy fire and still drop tons of explosives exactly where it hurt the most. His answer sounded crazy: go backward in time. Sitting quietly in the reserve fleet was a sleeping giant from World War II, the battleship USS New Jersey. A lot of younger officers laughed. They called her an old dinosaur, a floating pile of scrap. How could a ship built in the 1940s survive against modern missiles? They were about to find out they had just woken up the most frightening weapon on the planet. In April 1968, the New Jersey came back to life. She became the only battleship still fighting anywhere in the world, a living piece of history that didn't care about the future. Her numbers were insane, armor almost 2 feet thick in places, and her heart 9 massive 16-inch guns. Picture this. Take a Volkswagen Beetle, squeeze it down into one solid chunk of steel, and then shoot it almost 25 miles with pinpoint accuracy. One single shell could dig a hole as deep as a 5-story building and wipe a football field-sized patch of jungle clean in a heartbeat. But raw power wasn't what made her deadly. Deep inside the ship, protected under layers of steel, sat a secret room called Main Battery Plot. That was the brain. And the amazing thing, it had no computers as we know them today. No chips, no screens, no software. It was a giant mechanical calculator called the Mark 8 analog computer. Tons of gears, cams, and metal disks all working together. While the flimsy electronic computers of the 1960s crashed from the vibration of battle, this old mechanical beast never missed a beat. Even when the ship was rocking wildly in a storm, it calmly solved complicated math problems in real time. It figured out wind, humidity, the temperature of the gunpowder, how worn the barrels were, and even the spin of the Earth itself, something called the Coriolis effect. Miss that last one and your shot could land hundreds of yards off target. The Mark 8 never missed it. Old-school brute force, plus perfect old-school math, created something brand new and terrifying. In October 1968, a small island called Hon Mat, sometimes called Hon May, sat in the way of American ships heading to Vinh. North Vietnamese guns on that island had already damaged several U.S. warships. The order came down, take it out. The New Jersey turned her 9 barrels toward the island, and the Black Dragon opened its mouth. The bombardment was beyond anything anyone had ever seen. Planes flying overhead as spotters started yelling over the radio, "Cease fire! Cease fire! The island is gone!"
all they could see was a giant cloud of smoke and dust rising thousands of feet into the sky. For a few terrifying minutes, the shape of the island really did seem to vanish. Of course, the island didn't sink, rock doesn't sink, but the New Jersey did something almost as unbelievable. She rewrote the map. Mountaintops were blown flat, caves full of enemy guns collapsed, burying everything inside. The landscape itself was changed forever by high explosives. The damage to the ship was brutal too. Veterans remember paint bubbling and peeling off the red-hot gun barrels. The beautiful teak wood decks cracked and splintered from the shock waves of her own guns. But to the men on the receiving end, the New Jersey wasn't a ship anymore. It was a force of nature. That's how the legend of the Black Dragon and the Vanishing Island was born. And that's why more than 50 years later, the name USS New Jersey still make tough old soldiers go quiet for a moment before they start to speak.
Once again, the ship was awakened, but this time she was no longer purely a machine of the past. She was a hybrid. Alongside the 9 legendary 16-inch guns, they fitted her with Tomahawk cruise missiles, Harpoon anti-ship missiles, and rapid-fire defense systems. The New Jersey became a naval Frankenstein, a thick steel body of World War II carrying the most advanced weapons of the electronic age. In Lebanon in 1983, those aging barrels roared once more, and once again the enemy trembled at the screech of flying Volkswagens passing overhead, proving that while technology may change, the physics of fear remains the same. All wars eventually burn out. In 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, the mission of the New Jersey officially ended. Today, she rests at the pier in Camden, New Jersey, serving as a floating museum. But take a look deep inside her. The Mark VIII analog computer still sits there, silent. The gears have stopped turning, the grease has dried up, but it remains an engineering masterpiece that humanity will likely never build again. We live in the era of artificial intelligence, of microscopic silicon chips. We believe that digital is superior, but the USS New Jersey stands there as a towering reminder of the power of mechanics, of an age when men built machines that could endure hell, shake the earth, and calculate the trajectory of death using nothing but brass gears. Honorable Matt Island has turned green again today, but if you look closely at the topography, you will still see the scars, the mountains that were sheared flat, the caves that were collapsed. That is the signature of the Black Dragon, a signature written in 6,000 tons of high explosives and steel carved deep into the Earth's crust to remind us of a moment when the sea truly raged. The USS New Jersey proved that sometimes the newest technology is not the best. Sometimes an aging mechanical brain is more reliable than a supercomputer. What do you think? Did the modern Navy make a mistake by completely eliminating battleships? The soul of the Black Dragon is still alive. It reminds us of an era when humans tamed the ocean with steel and fire, not with software. In a world of remote-control push-button warfare, the towering, rugged presence of the New Jersey poses a haunting question. Can cutting-edge technology truly replace the overwhelming power of physics? Or have we lost something vital by hastily discarding these giants? If war broke out tomorrow, would you place your trust in microscopic chips or in the 2-foot-thick steel armor of Big J? Share your perspective. I will read every single one of your opinions. Don't forget to hit like if you found this video informative and subscribe to the channel to join us in decoding the next military mystery. Thank you for watching. See you next time.
The United States Navy understood exactly how much terror that train whistle scream created in people's hearts. Right after the first full broadside, they started dropping thousands of leaflets over the target zones. The message on those leaflets was short and ice-cold. You have just taken a salvo from the most powerful battleship on Earth. If you do not surrender within 10 minutes, you will receive another one. Hundreds of enemy soldiers came out with their hands up. They were not cowards. They were realistic. Against regular foot soldiers, they still had a fighting chance. Against airplanes, they could dig in and hide. But against the New Jersey, they were facing something unstoppable, like trying to stop an earthquake with rifles. The nickname Black Dragon was not invented by the American crews. It came straight from the terrified enemy troops who watched this giant ship spit fire from miles out at sea. In under 6 months of action, the New Jersey fired close to 6,000 rounds from her 16-inch guns, more than she had shot in all 4 years of World War II put together. She was so successful that she actually hurt her own cause. Let us step back inside turret number 2. The heat inside could climb past 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The air was thick with the smell of hot oil, sweaty bodies, and pure fear. When the Mark 8 fire control computer finished its calculations and sent the signal, real men still had to do the final work. A 2,700-pound shell was pushed into the barrel, followed by 6 silk bags holding a total of 660 pounds of powder. The breech block swung closed with a deep, heavy clang that sounded like the lid of a coffin slamming shut. The moment the fire control officer pulled the trigger, the laws of physics took over. The kick from those 9 massive guns pushed the entire 60,000-ton ship backward through the water. The pressure wave ripped the ocean surface open and left a sudden empty space behind the ship. One old sailor remembered, if you were standing in the wrong place on deck when she fired, the shock wave didn't just knock you over, it sucked every bit of air out of your lungs so fast you passed out before the sound even reached your ears. The real nightmare, however, was not on the ship, it was on the receiving end. Picture yourself as an enemy soldier 20 miles inland. You cannot see the ocean, you cannot see the battleship. If your position is the target, the worst part is the total silence right before impact. The shell travels faster than sound, so it hits the ground before you ever hear the guns fire. Death arrives before the warning bell rings. One moment you are standing quietly in the jungle, the next moment the ground erupts and leaves a hole 50 feet deep. Only the few men lucky enough to be on the very edge of the blast lived long enough to hear what came next. A loud ripping noise, like heavy canvas being torn apart, followed by a furious mechanical roar that tore through the sky. That was no figure of speech. The shell weighed as much as a car and literally punched a hole through the air, creating one sonic boom after another. By the time you heard that freight train scream overhead, the shell had already landed. Anything alive inside an area the size of a football stadium was gone. A crater 50 feet deep appeared in an instant. Full-grown trees were ripped out of the ground and thrown aside like matchsticks. Thick concrete bunkers were smashed flat like empty eggshells. Men who survived the edge of the explosion often bled from their ears and nose just from the pressure wave, even when no piece of metal ever touched them. Yet, sometimes, the deadliest weapon in war is not on the battlefield at all. It sits in cool, air-conditioned conference rooms thousands of miles away. By March 1969, the New Jersey was at the absolute top of her game. The Black Dragon owned the entire coastline. Declassified North Vietnamese documents later admitted that they considered the ship one of the biggest dangers they faced. And because she was so dangerous, she turned into a bargaining chip at the peace talks in Paris. The other side made a clear demand. If the talks were going to keep going, that monster had to stop shooting and had to leave the area. This is one of the cruelest twists in military history. The USS New Jersey was too good at her job. She caused so much destruction that her very presence became a roadblock to peace. In April 1969, the order finally came down. The engines started turning. The great ship pointed her bow eastward and sailed away from a war she was clearly winning. On the maps in Paris, pulling the New Jersey out looked like a smart diplomatic play, but for the thousands of Marines lying in the mud along the DMZ, it felt like a death sentence. They called her their guardian angel. Whenever those 16-inch guns opened up, the Marines knew they were safe. When the ship turned away in April 1969, she left behind a frightening quiet. One veteran later said, "It was like someone took your rifle away and pushed you out into the open with a pack of wolves all around you." After only 6 months, one of the shortest but most intense combat tours in naval history, the New Jersey was forced to leave the fight for the second time in her career. She sailed home carrying 19 battle stars and the record as the most decorated battleship ever built. She also carried the bitter taste of a warrior pulled out of battle just when victory was in sight. But real legends do not stay gone forever. In the 1980s, the Cold War heated up again. President Ronald Reagan decided to build a 600-ship navy to stand up to the Soviet Union, and he remembered Big J.